Hello, this is Brian Reil, and I'm coming to you today because the Embers of the Imperium rulebook has been officially released. And so I've got a copy of it through Drive-Thru RPG, and I just thought I'd take a look. I have skimmed through it a little bit already, and I'm gonna just kind of share some of it. I don't want to share too much because I don't want to get in trouble for, I don't want people taking too much information and being able to use it without buying the PDF or the book. So let me just get to share it. If you are not aware, myself and some friends had been running and playing a version of Embers of the Imperium for about a year. We did it, but we had to make our own. So we used the Genesis Core Rulebook, of course, the Ashes of Power module they'd released a couple years ago in 2021, I think, and whatever else we could get our hands on, just to kind of put together our own Embers of the Imperium. And we did record those sessions. And even though, you know, we're not Critical Role or anything, but I thought it was a lot of fun and we did a pretty good job. So I'm going to link those videos or the playlist into the description of the video in case you want to check those out. But this here is the official rules because I just kind of wanted to see how we did in comparing how we did versus the official rules here. So just looking at the cover, you can see already they've pretty much followed the shapes of the ships from the board game. So in case you're not aware, Twilight Imperium is a board game. A giant space opera sort of epic board game, and Embers of the Imperium is a role-playing game based on that. But you can see here they have the dreadnought, cruiser, a fighter, and they're basically the shape that they are in the actual game. So starting off there, I'll kind of scroll through. There's a lot of lore in this book. What I'm noticing that they were missing is I don't see a lot of stuff talking about the dice and how those work. So if you've ever played any of the Genesis games, this follows their dice system. So what I think is and I'll show you that it seems like you need the Genesis Core Rulebook for some of the information you're actually going to need to play this. So I wouldn't say this is entirely standalone because a lot of the references that I'll show you in here, you do need the actual core book to look up. So we're going through the steps that you use to create a character. So first thing is your background, and that's just like, why did you join the Caleres? So what this role-playing game is based on is that there's a group called the Caleres Council, or the Council Caleres. They're the Galactic Council's special forces that are kind of brought together to help defend against the galaxy. But a lot of the factions in the Galactic Council are grudgingly supporting it. So they're not necessarily offering their best people or their best equipment. It's just something they've all agreed they need to do, but they don't want to put a lot of money into it necessarily. And so determining the background is kind of like, what is it that brought you in to the Caleres? Like, how did you get drafted? So maybe they drafted you because you knew too much information, or you were in another position, you got disgraced, just kind of been shoveled out to them. So, you know, it's just kind of different things like that. I think there's one at the end, like the true believer. This is just the rare occasion where somebody really believes in the cause here. Then you select your species. So they're not all available, but quite a few of them are. And so that's interesting. Drua. So we got the Kreis, we got the Drua, which is the Nalu. Got the Gashlai, which is the Embers of Muat, the Hakan, of course, the humans. Hylar, which is the Jolnar, Letnev, Nor. They managed to get the Nazroka in there. The Sar, the Shikrai, which is the Argent Flight. They don't have to be Argent Flight, actually. There's a lot of Shikrai who aren't Argent Flight, but the Argent Flight is kind of a special forces faction of Shikrai. The Titans, I was impressed they actually managed to get the Titans in here. Winu and Xjaw. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I always say Xjaw for these guys, the turtle folk, and the Israel. Now, what's interesting about this is they don't have the Empyrean or the Arborek, but if you watch our playlist, two of our characters, we had one that was actually an Empyrean, which was pretty easy to implement. It's just kind of they eat starlight, so they can breathe in. They don't need to breathe, so they can exist in space. They need access to starlight to eat, so underground for long periods of time isn't great. And they communicate with radio waves, so they can't talk to anyone unless they have comms or something that they can speak through. That's how we did it. And then we had an Arbreck Derzuga, which is basically what that is the Arbreck are these like plant or fungal. It's actually a single giant entity. The planet is essentially like one big entity. And then these individuals that go out are basically kind of like if the cells of your body were to go on their own little field trips and they come back and feed you all the information they learned. What the Derzuga are is the Arbreck will find corpses of usually humans or Letnev, and then they'll plant a fungus in it, and that fungus will take over the corpse. It's kind of like a body snatcher. The fungus will take over the corpse and animate it so that they can talk to people, because otherwise they can't communicate with the other beings. So we had one of these Derzuga in a Letnev body, and we had a Empyrean, as well as we had a Mentak, which isn't in here, but a Mentak is just a, it can be any race really. So ours was Letnev. And we had a Sar, which is in here. And so again, you need some familiarity with the stats and everything from the Genesis core book, to probably understand a lot of what they're talking about here with their stats blocks and everything. Then the careers, so we didn't use these obviously when we did our character creation, but this will kind of put out the different types of careers and what skills and armor or gear and everything you'd start with for that. We just had it so everybody picked 6 skills that they were trained in, kind of based on their own backgrounds. But this here gives you, kind of outlines what your skills and equipment would be to start. So we have some new skills, and these are all described and outlined here in the Embers of the Imperium book, but it doesn't outline all of the ones that are already in the Genesis rulebook. And so when you get to table 1.1, this kind of lists all the skills that would be available to the characters. But you'll notice under the source, most of them are just listed under the Genesis core rulebook, except for a few of the knowledge ones here, which were custom for Embers of the Imperium. So again, you would need this book to look up the rest of these, what these skills are and how they work. They've only added about 3. What they did add a lot of, though, is the talents. So there's only about 3 new skills. Knowledge, they're all knowledge skills, but they added actually a lot of talents. So again, you would need the core manual to get. There are a lot of other talents in the core manual, but this actually adds quite a few talents, which I think is pretty cool. But again, when you're looking at this, there are a lot you'd have to go into the core rulebook to find. All right, agendas I think are really interesting in this. So if you've ever played Star Wars Edge of the Empire or one of those, they're from the same studio and they follow the same Genesis rules. And they have different things like motivations that your character has. So these are things that are supposed to drive your character's actions. What are your character's personal goals? So you have your campaign or your team goals. So in the case of this game, the Kalaris, your goal, you're going to be getting assignments to protect the galaxy. But each character, each individual is also supposed to have their own agendas. So it's like, for example, I'm working to block this wormhole from the Volwraith coming through, for example. But my personal agenda could be I need to move up the ranks of the Kalaris Council. So it could be like all of the things how do I get promoted, right? And so they actually have I think a more precise or more detailed rule set for this than I think they did in Star Wars, where they actually kind of outline what kind of rewards you can get for accomplishing your agenda. They say you have all these benchmarks, and you say 4 benchmarks to complete your agenda. So if your goal is to move up in rank, you might have 4 rank increases you need to hit, and once you hit those 4 rank increases, then they have lists of potential rewards that you could get. So what that does is gives each character their own driving motivation, as opposed to just following along with the core adventures. And then I think they were talking about too, potentially once you finish your benchmark, having a specific side mission to really fulfill the agenda after that, and then you get some sort of special reward, probably depending on what you were doing. They have a lot of lore in here. So here they're talking about a lot of the different factions you can encounter or play. So they didn't have the Empyrean as a playable race here, but they do kind of describe them, who they are. So certainly at least intended as NPCs. Kind of scroll through a lot of that here. Gear, so this is important. So we were using, in our campaign, we were using the Star Wars Edge of the Empire gear lists and prices and everything, which I think you could still probably do. But what's very interesting in this book is that, which they don't have in Star Wars, is they talk to you about the cultural manufacturing differences. So this table is really interesting, as it tells you, you know, if armor is made by the Druwa or the Nalu, how is that different than Hylar armor or something, right? So, you know, Hylar weapons, for example, they're more accurate than normal weapons, but they're also more expensive. Druwa actually have no adjustment, but talks about what they would look like. So aesthetically, all the weapons will be different. They have different styles, but some of them are functionally different. And I actually think that's really interesting. So this is a really cool addition. And it goes to kind of just all your different types of weapons and armor and all that. Let's scroll through this pretty quick here. You know, more gear, so tools and such. I'm just gonna rip through this. They do have artifacts too, and these came up as if you look at the bottom, table 2.7 here, they got some artifacts. You can see they're super expensive, but they were also offered options as rewards for finishing personal agendas and stuff. Maybe getting a hold of an artifact or something. Vehicles, chapter 3. So this outlines the different types of ships. The nice thing here for when we were playing our campaign, I think we actually did a pretty close job to how they describe it, like how long it would take to fly to different parts of the galaxy and stuff. This goes through all the different types of ships and mechs and like vehicles that you can get. Oh, one thing we were doing differently is that for the Volray, we had them flying meat ships. So it was like meat-based technology, but really according to this, they were living creatures. So they're fleshy, but they're actually like creatures. All right, so let's get through some of these ships here. Yeah, so the galaxy. So the galaxy, it goes through the different parts of the galaxy. There's actually a map in here. So we found one online that we were using that somebody had made custom, but this is like the official galaxy layout here. And then if you go into there's actually a chart that'll tell you how long it would take to get to certain parts of the galaxy, depending on the speed of your ship. And that can be, you know, it could be years. And then the core of the galaxy, like gravity affects your speed as well. And so you can't do like faster than light speed around huge gravitational bodies. And the center of the galaxy kind of messes with that. Although the Mahawk apparently have found a way to deal with it. Okay, sorry, I'm just scrolling through. They got a lot of the planets from the game are in here with some detailed descriptions, including some of the legendary planets. I think all the legendary planets might be in here, actually. So a lot of the planets there are described like the home systems you would get in the board game, as well as the normal planets. Goes through the Calarius Council itself. So the Calarius Council is led by the Tribuni, which is 3 of the Galactic Council members that run it. And this will go through the details of the Calarius and their connection to the Council. This is the headquarters map. We weren't using this, obviously. We made our own map. In fact, I had it, so it was kind of early days before they had this huge lair. It was kind of just more of a makeshift headquarters. And they just started constructing the big fortress. Okay, so yeah, sorry, more planets. Yeah, there's a lot of lore. So I think most of this end part looks like it's just mostly lore. Oh, adversary. So chapter 6, we get into adversary. So these are just stats blocks you can use for enemies or NPCs. So that's neat. Haven't really read through most of these. All right, and then it looks like the game master, the storyteller stuffs here is at the end on how to run a game. So yeah, pretty interesting. I think just the main note is if you're looking to pick this up, it looks like you will need access to the Genesis core system rulebook as well. There you go. Looks pretty interesting. If I do it a more, at some point I'll give it a more thorough read, and maybe if I have any different thoughts on it, I might come back and share them. But if you just want a quick peek what's inside before you go out and buy it, there you go. So have a wonderful day.